I must shatter my very self, jostling through sextillions of lives and undergoing again and again the throes of birth and the pangs of death. I can endure all suffering as long as I know at the end of it, I attain my supreme goal, oneness with thy bliss. What care I if I leave behind mangled heaps of my fleshly forms, broken by my struggles to reach thee? I offer all my earthly happiness in exchange for thy joy. Thy bliss alone is mine, alone is mine. Oh, tell me clearly that thou wilt surely be mine. I can wait patiently then 100,000 years as if they were but a day. Tell me, wilt thou be mine? So we are really called today. We are called to surrender our deluded ego, that force of darkness that lives within all of us, to the wise, almighty will of the divine. The divine will always bring us inner peace, joy, but we must learn how to surrender wholeheartedly. Now, surrender, we think, how are we going to find victory in surrender? Victory isn't passive. Surrender is a way that we have a victorious life because we learn how to relax, to release, to integrate, and to transmute, and to rise above ego consciousness and grow into the consciousness of all the superheroes, the masters of self-realization. So surrender truly is a call to faith, and in the divine force, it takes incredible will to really just let go and surrender into what's happening within our own selves. But our ego loves to control. Our ego restricts, right? Our true self expands. And so the ego wants to control everything and put everything in a box, and it creates limitations, and that box imprisons us. But we break through. We break through surrender, and it allows us to break free, and we step into what's called the wisdom of uncertainty. You wouldn't think there'd be wisdom with uncertainty, but we allow ourselves to surrender, and that flow of grace is revealed to us. We feel like, all right, I got to plan everything. Imagine if we went on a vacation together, all of us, and I was like, and you were like, oh, maybe we could try this, and maybe we'll go see this. And I was like, nope, I called AAA. I got the whole agenda. We're going to go here. We have to be at the hotel. And you guys are like, oh, what? I really want to go with the flow of grace. I just wanted, let's go explore. Let's have fun, right? Let's be free. But that ego, it wants to, safe and controlled. We break out of that today, all of us. We're here for a reason, each one of us, to hear these words and to fully connect with the power of surrender in our lives. The whole universe, when we fully connect to God, the whole universe begins to conspire to help us. And then we become, like the Bhagavad Gita said, that fearless, tireless, joyful being that we truly are. And when our individual aspirations are surrendered to the will of God, unlimited possibilities for all of us happen. When we were at, we all had a beautiful retreat this weekend, a Kriya retreat, and we had Nayaswami Maria and a beautiful, beautiful Deva Leva come and talk about the power of Kriya Yoga. If you ever may have seen that in the chapter of the autobiography of how it really is one of the fastest way to free our channel and to become free in God. And after the retreat, we had talked about, well, who's going to lead service next week? There's so much was going on. People were traveling, people were having illness and different things they were going through. And I said, it ended up that I was going to do it. And on the way home, I was like, God, I have such a busy week. Please, God and Guru, show me, teach me surrender. And so all of a sudden I had this idea, well, let me just, on this 2.5-hour ride, let me just start to listen. And I put on some Ananda talks on victory leads to surrender, and how in surrender does lie victory in the victorious life. And I was so uplifting to spend that time all the way on my way home from the Kriya retreat. It was so powerful to be there and be with all our Guru Bhais. There was, I don't know, like 70 of us that were just all explored this beautiful weekend in the power of Kriya Yoga together. It was just very, very impactful for everybody, but a deep experience, And it was on the way home that I said, okay, well, I have to come and take care of my mom. And so my mom was waiting for me. And I was like, well, Mom, let's just go to Stop and Shop. I got to get some stamps. I'm just going to start with that. Well, it was a rainy day. What are we going to do? You know, let's just go get some stamps. So I go to just Stop and Shop and I go to the booth and the lady said, okay, that's $14. I was like, in my mind, I was like, wasn't it $7 3 months ago? How does it double in 3 months, right? But I was like, I surrendered. I didn't want to bring that complaint out to this poor person who's just giving them to me. She's not responsible for they doubled in price. So I just surrendered into it. I felt into that restriction and I allowed it to loosen in the vrittis, the energy centers in the chakras, and allowed it to move up and hold my awareness here and just said, thank you so much. And I was able to let go. And I was like, wow, power of surrender is victorious. And then I was like, well, what are we going to do now? I was like, Mom, let's just take a ride through Wickford. The ideas just kept coming to me. And she was like, okay, great. And we had this beautiful time and the rain let up and on North Kingstown Beach, I let my dogs run and they played. They were in the back seat and we had a great time listening to all kind of beautiful music. And it was like, wow, no plans. We just surrendered to the day, let the day unfold. And it really started to happen in a beautiful way. And then we get home and I made some treats and we were on my porch. And Annaquatucket Road is the high school's on it. There must have been some kind of program because we're all relaxed now on the porch, watching the rain come down. It's like zoom, 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 100 miles an hour, these teenagers go into something. And I was like, that's not right. And then I was like, wait, Kelly, relax, surrender into it. Maybe there's something you might want to call the school or just let them know what's happening, but not right now. Just relax and surrender. You can take action later, but right now the action is to be just to be. And all of a sudden that energy of being on the porch and feeling connected and healthy and happy and enjoying the rest of the day was so beautiful. And that evening I decided to start working on my sermon, and by the grace of God, it just came. It just, everything I wanted to say, that everything that it felt like as a channel for the divine, everything started to happen in a very beautiful way. And I just felt such a beautiful, beautiful gratitude for that response from the divine, because usually I'm researching and looking and I'm restricting. I'm like, I got to do the right thing. And I was just, no, let me open up. What do we want to talk about? How can we talk about surrender in a beautiful way? And how can I really impact people that has meaning and able to take this home with them and practice it during the week? And so if surrender is faith in the divine force, the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, abandon all varieties of dharma, which is purpose, life purpose, simply surrender unto me alone. I shall liberate you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And so that was it. When I went in and I relaxed in and felt into the restriction, the control, the anger, whatever it might be, the upset, I was able to respond inwardly. And through that response and relaxation, instead of reacting outwardly, I was able to hold that energy, and that force of my attention and response was able to lift it up the spine to be transmuted. And this is really such a powerful tool for all of us in this world to be, we're all called to be saints and sages and angels and guides. And to do that, we have to learn how to respond by first going inward and then bringing that loving response outward instead of reacting and restricting as the ego teaches us to do. As we celebrate Lahiri's Mahashaya's birthday and Mahasamadhi this week, he talks about surrender and says, Banat, Banat, Ban Jai, doing, one day, done. So he talks about deepening our surrender, just keep deepening it. And one day what happens is we begin to automatically, we don't have to consciously go into it to transmute it and relax it to be able to respond in a loving way. It happens naturally and very organically because we've freed all the energy centers that are holding negativity in the body. So he says it requires to deepen our efforts and to really live in surrender, that sense of just like aliveness and adventure and joyfulness. It requires steadfast, daily, lifelong patterns. If we do our part, God and Guru will do the best. So let's take a look at these daily, lifelong patterns that we need to do our part. because spiritual surrender is a great threat to the ego. Because why? It leads to great freedom, and our ego wants to hold us in that prison. Yogananda said, perfect surrender to God's will is not passive. We need great willpower and concentration to perpetually attune the mind, retune the mind to surrender to divine will. Relax and feel into the discomfort, allow it to move through. And Sri Yukteswar, in Yogananda's first meeting in the autobiography of a yogi, Sri Yukteswar said to Yogananda, will you allow me to discipline you? And Yogananda said, why, sir? When I encountered my guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, my will was guided by whims all over the place. But when I attuned to Lahiri Mahashaya's wisdom-guided will, my own will became free. It was guided by wisdom. And in that way, Yoganandaji said, in that same way, I discovered that by attuning my will to Sri Yukteswar's wisdom-guided will, my will became free. And that's the promise that we get for all of us. We attune our will to the great masters who, they're masters because they mastered their ego. They transformed ego consciousness into super consciousness. That is our path. When our disciple of Yogananda at Washington said, I want my own free will, I'm going to rely on me, Yogananda said, you cannot have free will as long as you have an ego. That ego tricks us. It tells us, it comes into our thoughts and actions and brings them out of the light into the darkness. And the disciple decided to check that out when he went away. And years later, he came back and asked Yoganandaji, please help me to surrender. Help me to attune my will to thy will. Because surrender is a gift that we all are giving ourselves. And this gift, it is truly an art of faith. It is saying that even though I can't see the river is flowing, I trust that it will take me in the right direction. That just allowing ourselves to trust and be in that flow of the water, of the energy and the channel of the divine. So that Kriya retreat was just beautiful with Nayaswami, Maria, and Deva Leela. And Nayaswami, Maria told a beautiful story about surrender in the retreat. And she said the first day she came to live at Ananda village was the day after the whole village was destroyed by fire in, I think, 1979. What an act of surrender, right? Everything, there was no buildings, there was nothing but just everything burned. And that was her first day. So what a day to begin as a devotee, and she said maybe 6 months later, she had been walking through the woods and, she stopped at the water and sat by the water and looked in the water. And all of a sudden, everything became just white. She didn't see any trees, anything. She just felt this sense of just beingness and just being in this void, this space. And she heard a voice very clearly say, now what are you going to do? She said, what could I do but surrender? Just to allow and just to be with it. And when she said that, it reminded me of a time maybe 25 years ago when I was really starting to really see how detrimental my ego was in my life. And on that day I was working, but I had a space in between my clients, and my friend said, I'm at Narragansett Beach. And I lived pretty close to there at that point. Come down and hang out. We're sitting here on the beach. Come down for a few hours. I said, oh, it's so hot and humid. That would be great to go for a swim. So I go down to Narragansett Beach, and it was like everybody in Rhode Island was on that beach. There was no space. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to find my friend, right? I left my cell phone at home. Or maybe did I have one 25 years ago? I don't even know, but I couldn't reach her. So I went up to the lifeguard stand. I said, can you call my friend? He said, it's an emergency. And I'm like, no. So then I keep looking for him, I'm hot, I'm sweaty. And then I'm just like, oh, and my ego was getting so strong. I didn't know why at the time, but it was so strong. It was like, oh, these tourists, and then it was like, people are in my way and, there's nowhere to stand and I can't find my friend, and all this complaining and reactivity and negativity was coming through me. It was so intense till all of a sudden it was just like the heat of the sun and the heat of the intensity. I just had to surrender. And there was one little postage stamp of space on the beach. And I just collapsed and sat there. And I looked up. And all of a sudden, all I saw was everyone in their beauty, everybody in a sense of, it felt so heavenly. Like I entered into their consciousness, and it felt like everybody was in joy consciousness, their astral body. It was like their dense bodies weren't there. And I saw a father and his son playing, and it was just like they were just playing in the water. And it was just, everything felt so attuned into the light. All the darkness disappeared, and I saw heaven on earth. I really did. And I just watched in a sense of complete awe of like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And I just sat there and allowed it and surrendered into this feeling of like, wow, at everyone's deepest core is true beauty and joy and love and truth. Everybody. It was like everybody had lost their ego and lived in that freedom of their true self. And it was such a powerful, powerful thing. I saw everyone in their joy nature. The scene was so heavenly, and there was a complete shift from ego perception into surrender. And I was like, this is how I want to live. But unfortunately, what happened is I had to see all the ways I didn't surrender in life before I was able to really do it. And that's how things work oftentimes. But that moment in time, I'll never forget it. And I always try to aspire to find that into my life again, and to tune into that way of being. And I think that's how the masters saw. I think that's how Yogananda saw us all, in our light, in our joy, these beautiful children of the divine, connected and in love. I really think that's how Yogananda saw us all, right from here, right? Everything opened in my spiritual eye, and all the ego couldn't survive. The darkness cannot survive in that light. And just as the story in the autobiography of Yogi of Babaji, and he was sitting in a circle with all his devotees high in the Himalayan mountains, meditating and having satsang, and this beautiful campfire in the mountains and all under the stars. It was so beautiful. And all of a sudden, a stranger arrived. He had climbed, I don't know how he did it. He climbed up all these rocks and mountains. And finally, he was able to come to the cliff, and he walked and he said to Babaji, with all my heart, please accept me as your devotee. I have been wandering. I've been looking for you for so long. Please, may I be your devotee? Babaji had no response. If you refuse me, I will jump off this mountain. I will just run and jump right off the mountain. Babaji said, jump then. I can't accept you at this present state of development. And the devotee and jumped over the cliff. All the disciples that were by the fire with him were so shocked. Babaji said to go fetch the body. They brought the body back to Babaji. And he said, Babaji was beaming so lovingly and so proudly, saying, you are now ready for discipleship. You have courageously passed a difficult test. You are now one of the immortal flock. And so this is the power of surrender. He just knew the only thing that mattered to him was God and Guru, that Babaji. And so he surrendered all his fear and was able to take this big leap of faith to trust that he would be saved and be brought into the divine. Imagine having that kind of courage. And yet each one of us in this human experience have been called to courage over and over and over again. Sometimes the tests, they just knock us out. And other times they grow us and strengthen us. And we have that capacity to feel into our feelings and to awaken more and more free from ego consciousness. And so as Krishna told Arjuna, I shall liberate you all from sinful reactions. So that reactivity, how do we let that go? How do we let that go? And that power of karma and how we come back over and over again. But it is through Kriya Yoga that we're able to clear these seeds of karma and to grow spiritually. A major part of spiritual growth is to dissolve the vrittis. These are whirlpools or energy centers, seeds of karma that live inside of our chakra system. And our job is to become free of them. These energy whirlpools are caused by our countless desires and likes and dislikes, right? I liked I didn't like that those stamps were double the price. I wanted them to be back to the same price. But it was like I had to relax into that like and dislike, that conflict that creates stress and anxiety and negativity and refuels the ego. To relax and surrender into it, it doesn't have any power over us anymore. And so we must dislodge these vrittis, these energies, from their location in the astral spine. We have to lift them into the inner light and into the spiritual eye. And Nayaswami Gyandev from Ananda village says, we do this by increasing the amount of energy in the body and raising it up the spine to the spiritual eye. We have so many ways on this path. We have energization exercises where we draw the energy into the body. We have asana, the yoga asanas, and so many classes, and thinking in positive way and using affirmations, using japa, using ways of using the beautiful truths of the divine masters to change our consciousness from negative thought to the positive thoughts and to live with our open heart, right? The biggest reaction we have in life, we close our hearts. We close down, we close our hearts. I'm not going to be loving you because you did this, this, and this, right? That conditional love, that reaction. But our job is to open our hearts into unconditional love over and over and over again, despite what's coming at us, to respond through opening our hearts to inwardly transmuting our own feeling, to help those vrittis dislodge from the body and lift it. How can I see this situation in a higher light? How can you know that it was sent by the divine for my highest and best good so that I can get free from these vrittis and end a way of living? I mean, we're all moving towards living that fearlessness. I live unafraid. I live with unconditional love and acceptance of all. And so we increase that amount of energy in the spine through all these beautiful techniques. The Kriya Yoga technique is the biggest one. And every time we meditate, we dissolve these ego vrittis. This is the effort, Lahiri Mahashaya said, when it requires daily, steadfast, lifelong patterns. We're called today to strengthen these patterns, to call in Kriya Yoga. We have so many classes. We all would love to teach anybody who hasn't done it yet, or if anyone needs help and support, if they've just learned it, whatever you might need, we always are here. The ministers, Inez and Kyle and myself, Dhuti, there's so many people at Ananda Village. Everyone is always there to support any kind of spiritual growth, to awaken this power of Kriya, to free yourself from ego consciousness. And I'll end with a quote from Yogananda: surrender is the only answer. God is the only harbor of safety in this harsh world. Take shelter in him with all the eagerness of your heart, and through surrender, you will have victory.